saying to ourselves, listen to everything. Even if you come to the conclusion that you disagree, listen and then speak. In fact, the Bible says, listen to everything. He says, listen to everything. You may think you have all the information, but don't be a fool who speaks his mind before he hears the other person out. And also, in saying, let every man be slow to speak, it's not saying don't speak, because we need to speak. Now, oftentimes in a home, there's two extremes. There's the blower-uppers and there's the clammer-uppers. Now, which one involves anger? Both of them. It's just different. It's angry responses, but they're doing it in their own way. They're both are sin. Now, my marriage, I'm the clammer-upper. And my wife would be more inclined to be a blowing-upper. And I used to think that I was the spiritual one because I didn't say everything that was on my mind. But the problem was I didn't say anything. And that's another sinful way of showing your anger, is by climbing up and not being willing to communicate. So, being silent and clamming up, which is a form of vengeance on the other person. In fact, one man calls it bloodless murder. You're getting vengeance by shutting them out. You're still angry. You're still thinking angry thoughts in your mind, but you're not communicating what you need to communicate in order to resolve the problem. And so he's not saying don't speak. He's just saying be slow to speak and think about what you're going to say. Have restraint on what you say. Proverbs 10:19 says, in the multitudes of words, sin is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is wise. Another verse says, he who has knowledge spares his word, and a man of understanding is of a calm spirit. Even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace. When he shuts his lips, he's considered receptive. So, that's why I thought I was being spiritual. In all reality, I wasn't. Because I wasn't communicating. So we have a responsibility to speak. But we need to be slow to speak. We need to think about our words. And there ought to be a restraint on them. And what we ought to speak in every situation is truth. God's truth. We should not exaggerate the sin of the other person and treat ours as being minor. We need to speak truth and admit, okay, I did sin in what I did. And we need to minister grace to that person. I'd like you to turn to Ephesians. Keep your finger in James. Don't lose that. Ephesians chapter 4. In verse 29, this is a powerful verse. It says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. Now notice, that's a command. Don't let any corrupt communication, rotten communication, hurtful, intending to be hurtful. But only that which is good to the use of edifying. And notice when the communication out of our mouth, when it is good to the use of edifying, notice what it does. This is so good. It says that it may minister grace unto the hearer. I found that true even as I dealt with problems in my own home, like with our children. when there were no corrupt words that came out of my mouth, and I'm not talking about profanity or anything like that, I'm just talking about lashing out. When I spoke kindly and lovingly, but I dealt with the problem, and there were consequences. But I did it lovingly. What it did is it made my children, it made it easier for them to confess their sin, rather than blame shift. And they took it to heart, because they sensed that it was coming from a loving father, rather than someone who is just lashing out because you inconvenienced your father. I was trying to work, and I was trying to do something, and you got in the way, and what you discover is that the way you talk to your child or your spouse makes it easier for them. It can make it either easier for them to confess their sin, or it can make it harder for them. You don't want to say that which will exasperate your child. And that's the word that is used in Colossians chapter 3. It's a parallel passage to Ephesians chapter 4.